Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. Ours is a place where dreams take flight, voices are heard, and stories are shared. This is where cultures meet, connections are formed, and ideas are transformed into action. This is your destination for authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations. We're where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover our world of education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our USA Global TV channel and download our USA Global TV app. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. With heartfelt thanks to our executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, music scored by Yifei Tang from Cloud Road Music, creative direction by Paul Garcia, and I'm Al Cini, and I'm very proud to be part of the USA Global TV and Radio family. So join us here at USA Global TV and Radio. Make us your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication, or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited. Thank you for being a part of our global community. Let's inspire together.
Hey everybody, Monday night again. Here we are as you as a whole, body, mind, and soul. I'm Justin MIRIGLIANI. Great to have you here with us. Don't forget to chat in if you'd like, and we'll have a discussion for the next 40 minutes. So what today's topic is, and pardon me for my voice, I've been going through a 2-week cold here, so trying to fight through with scratchy throat. But the title is Holding Love in a Divided World. How do we connect with authenticity? I don't think that I'm shocking anybody by telling you that we're in a divided world. I think that that's pretty obvious, whether it's political or the way we think about how life should be lived and what people should do, what people should say, what people should not say, what's comedy, what's not comedy. There are a whole lot of things that are dividing us. Who's, the rich, the poor, class. I mean, there are so many things that divide us, and I find myself in a struggle personally with deciding how I'm able, or if I should, overlook certain things that I don't feel are right to me. And I'm saying that in a way that really not to be judgmental, but there are certain things I think that most people either decide are right or are wrong, and to them they're always right or wrong. I don't think there are too many people who are going to say that murder is acceptable. I would really wonder about that person if they said that. So I think that there are some things that we have common ground on. Rape, murder, robbery, destruction of people's property. I think these are all things that we agree on that they should not happen. What we disagree on a lot of the times is what is the answer to what punishment is commensurate with that particular crime. Right? If somebody stole a candy bar, is it the same as if somebody murdered somebody? Well, no. I mean, there are different scales, right? Different things that are should be looked at differently. But really, mainly, what I want to talk about is the idea of friendships and being able to understand, or at least, I guess, try to find a way to not let some of these divisions ruin relationships. And one of the things I was thinking of was, what if you had a friend who you love a lot? You've been through down the road and back again. You've been through all the things that friends go through, births of children and, deaths and parties and holidays and hockey games and football games or whatever it is. And you celebrate all these things together. You've mourned together. You've done all these things together. You have shared memories, shared experiences. And you love that person. That person really means a lot to you. But they are friends with somebody who holds values that are not necessarily values that you endorse. How do you reconcile that? And I'm finding that's hard for me because there's a part of me that wants to be able to accept people for where they are and what they're doing at the time and not be judgmental. And there's another part of me that wonders, am I doing the right thing? If I am I being my authentic self if I allow myself to keep my mouth shut or to pretend like something isn't happening that is. I have friends who are very close to me, as I said. We've celebrated a lot of things together. We mourn, and sometimes they're friends with other people who hold ideas that really are completely the opposite of what I would believe. Again, not saying that they're bad people, but they might hold an opinion that I find to be um, tough to palate or difficult to reconcile. And there's a internal fight inside of me to decide what to let go and what to push back on. And I'm thinking that's a universal conundrum that people are in. That they on the one hand, there's somebody that they love a lot, and that somebody might be friends with somebody else who condones things that we would not necessarily condone. So how do you deal with that? What do you do? It's not easy, and I'm seeing this play out a lot. It's not just political. I mean, obviously, political is probably the number one thing right now that's dividing everybody. I don't think I'm again. I don't think this is a shock to anybody. I don't think this is anyone's going to say, really. I know politics is such a big issue. It's a huge issue, and we're not a political station. We don't talk about politics, but that is what has been the central separation of people recently. Now there are other things, of course, but it's been political, and I've seen so much anger from people and the amount of tolerance that people have for each other, no matter what they believe. If somebody believes differently than them, a lot of the time it escalates very, very quickly into something that is not necessary. Now, I will be the first to admit that probably, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 years ago, I was more vehement with my own, and I'm not going to share them, but with my own um, ideals and my own way of thinking. And I was very vocal about it. And not only was I vocal about it, but if I'm being honest, I was probably obnoxious about it. I didn't allow myself to see the other person's side as much as I should have. I should have done that more. I was very. Uh, I wasn't afraid to escalate it. I would say things that normally I wouldn't say, and it's probably because of social media. I think it's easier to do on a computer. It's not a fear thing. People say, "Well, are you afraid to say something to somebody's face?" No, it's not a fear thing. It's more of a when you look at somebody in the eye that you really care about, do you really want to say the things that could hurt them? I think it's easier to type that than it is to say it to them. So it's not like, well, you're afraid you're a keyboard warrior, that type of thing. But even that, I think I've tried to stay away from it, steer clear of it for the last, I would say, 5 years or so. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change anybody's mind. It's not going to make anybody less agitated. Well, you're stopping them from becoming more agitated, actually. So that's the thing. But I guess the hard part is I don't have the answer to this. And I probably have said this on other shows. Having a microphone or wearing a stethoscope or whatever it is, having Esquire after your name doesn't mean that you have all the answers to everything in life. And I think that's one of the things that people make a mistake on is they see somebody who might be a high profile, and let's just pick somebody, let's say a Joe Rogan or somebody who's a huge podcaster. It's the first one that came to mind. And we say, well, that person's got to be right because they're popular. They got to be right, you know, or an influencer, right? We were talking, Dr. Jacqueline and I, about the Kardashians, and they're influencers, right? So if they're famous and they're influencers, then they got to be right. You know, they can't be wrong. There's no way. Or if somebody's a doctor who's trying to sell magic potions, well, he's a doctor, so he must, or she's a doctor, either one must know what they're talking about. And that's not necessarily the case. We don't always have the answers. But I think some things we have to know when and where to draw the line. And if I have a friend who's supposed to be close to me and they tolerate behavior from another person that I can't tolerate, what do I do? And I don't have the answer. My whole point is I don't have the answer. And I'm not sure anybody does. On the one hand, I could say, well, if you're friends with that other person, then if that's okay with you, then I'm out. You know, I can't be your friend because you're okay with the thoughts of that other person or their um the way that they look at the world. And if it's, to me, offensive or repugnant or something that I just can't accept, I have two choices to make. Do I stay friends with that friend, even though they condone something that I can't? Or do I just suck it up and not say a word about it and just deal with it? And if that other person comes around, just walk away and just not be a part of the event or whatever it is. What's the answer? Yeah, I wish I could tell you what the answer was. Or even if it's a friend who otherwise you get along with very well. And there are a lot of shared experiences, a lot of fun things, and a lot of jokes that you tell, and inside jokes, and your friends, your close friends, but maybe there's one thing about them that's just very difficult for you to overlook, very difficult for you to uh, accept. Do you throw the friendship away, or do you talk to them about it? Do you perhaps not talk to them about it and just ignore it? Maybe it's political. Again, not going to get into politics, but you believe one thing, they believe another thing. Is it worth having the conversation with them, or is that just going to make you angrier and them angrier? Is it better off that you just don't talk about it at all? I am starting to lean towards that, kind of doing my own thing for what I believe and let the chips fall where they may. I mean, some people may like it, some people may not. And if they don't, that's okay. And if they do, that's okay too. And you just can't please everybody. But there are certain things that I look at and think, wow, that's some backwards thinking, and it's very hard to be true to yourself and what you believe in, while at the same time accepting other people for something that's maybe 180 degrees different than what you believe in. And again, it comes down to which one wins out. I don't know. I mean, there are days where I think to myself, well, you know what, I can't take this anymore. I'm tired of it. I don't want to hear it. I'm out. And there are other days where I think to myself, well, this person's been in my life for 30 years, 40 years, and I don't want to lose them. I want them to be in my life. So sometimes you're kind of in the middle. You don't know exactly what direction to go. Do you stay and be close to that person because of your past history? Or do you start to separate because you don't ascribe to what either they believe in or what they allow other people to say in their house? Yeah. I've seen people uh, watching political news, one station or another, and then turning it off when they know somebody with an opposite view comes in the room. Now, some people will argue and say, well, you shouldn't have to. It's your house. You should be able to watch whatever you want. And if they don't like it, they have to live with it. And then other people will say, well, it's nice if you have a guest in your house, don't make them feel uncomfortable and put something on that would possibly upset them. Who's right? I mean, I don't think there's an answer to who's right. It comes down to, what do you believe? Some people will say, well, I'm not going to suspend my beliefs and my way of thinking just because somebody else doesn't agree with it. That's fair and legitimate. But what's also fair and legitimate is, I'm not going to make somebody in my house feel uncomfortable because I'm watching something that makes them feel uncomfortable. Both are valid. So how do you choose? How do you make that decision? And more, I'm starting to fall on the side of the opposite of what I was probably 5 years ago, where now, yeah, I get angry at things that I don't agree with, or angry about things that I feel are wrong or injustice in some way, shape, or form. But even if I have a close friend that believes opposite, I'm more likely now to just ignore it and stay friends with them and just try to steer clear of those subjects. And that's a big turnaround for me. I'm not I wouldn't say I'm a confrontational person, but I'm certainly somebody who, I don't back down verbally. I don't back down when certain things are done where I think that something should be said. I'm not that guy. I can't go to bed at night knowing that I should have said this, or I should have said that, or I should have stuck up for this person, or I should have stuck up for that person, and I didn't, because that's the way I was raised. That's the way I was born. I guess that was the way my brain was born, developed over time. So we're really treading a fine line here, I think, when we're talking about how do we connect and hold love in a divided world. A mixed marriage in the 70s and 60s and the 50s was people of different race. That's what was referred to as a mixed marriage. Now today, a mixed marriage is more along the lines of political views, whether you're conservative or you're liberal. I think that's more of a divide than what used to be racial divide. And how do we get around that? If you meet somebody who you really think is great, and you're dating, and you don't, obviously early on you don't talk about that stuff, you leave that alone, and then at some point it's going to come up. I mean, it's obvious that somebody's going to say something or watch a TV show or a channel that somebody doesn't like, and then you have to decide, if that person's 180% the other way, is that a relationship that you could salvage? Can you coexist? Can you look at that other person, still love them, and have a romantic relationship with them if they're not in line with your beliefs? Some people say yes, some people say no. And I don't think there is a right or wrong to this. I really don't. But where do we draw the line? I've always said that I would be loyal to all my friends and as much as I possibly could. And I have a best friend who I went to college with, and he's as close to me as family, and I love him a lot. And somebody said, well, the scenario of, well, what would happen if you found out that he was a pedophile, or something terrible, murderer, or anything like that? Would you still love him? And yeah, I mean, I would. Would I associate with him anymore? That's where I don't know. I really don't know the answer. Would I visit him in prison if he was arrested? Because I find those things repugnant. I think most people do, right? Pedophilia is probably one of the yeah, I would say the worst thing that you could possibly do. I would say that would be the number one, if not murder, rape. They're all in the same category, right? They're all things that are so horrible, it's almost impossible to uh, judge which one's worse than the other. But does my loyalty as a friend override my feelings of this is wrong and it's always wrong no matter who did it? So we have two comments, but we're going to go to commercial break. I just noticed that we're 20 minutes in. So we're going to take our commercial, and when we come back, we'll take the two comments.
Every woman carries a story of strength, of purpose, of light. Through her courage, the world is transformed. Through her grace, generations are inspired. This is Iconic Women. Within every woman lives a goddess, a celebration of brilliance, beauty, and empowerment. Join us every Wednesday at 11 a.m. New York, 4 p.m. London time. Only here on USA, Global TVR, and radio. Featuring the iconic Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, honoring voices that shine across the world. Subscribe to our YouTube channels, USA Global TV and Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, to watch and engage with all our content. World-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So we have two comments. Let's take a look at those comments and see what they are. There's Rachel, and I bet Antoinette's there. So Rachel says, "Hey, how's it going? If the relationship is 100% one-sided, it's time for me to exit politely and quietly." Okay, so Rachel's got a good take on it. It can't be one-sided. And there's Claire. So I see Claire's there with the clapping hands. Thank you, Claire, for joining us tonight. It's certainly, and from what Rachel said, nothing can be one-sided. You can't have a one-sided relationship in any way. There has to be some give and take. But I guess the question that this show brings up is, what can you take and what can you give? What are you willing to bend on? What are you not willing to bend on? And before the break, my example was, as much as I love my best friend, if he had done something heinous, what's the right thing to do? Is the right thing to still be a support for that person and still love them, even though they did something that you hate? Or is the answer to walk away and say, I can't allow that person who could do something like that be part of my life? And I really struggle with the answer. I think about hypocrisy has been a problem for me my whole life, worrying about whether I'm hypocritical or not. I tried not to be hypocritical, but I think that we're all hypocritical in some ways, some way, shape, or form. And just talking about one thing is one of my idols when I was growing up was Pele Lindbergh, the Flyers goalie, and we have a movie coming up about that. Charlie Min is doing a documentary about that, and Charlie's become a friend of mine, and we want to honor Pele, and he gave us a lot of joy, and there were a lot of great things that we remember and a lot of great times that we had, and we bonded over watching him play and the Flyers play at that time. And he was killed in an accident, drunk driving. Now, the way we look at it with Pele Lindbergh is, all right, well, Pele Lindbergh was drunk driving. Pele Lindbergh did pay the ultimate price. He died, lost his leg. He didn't kill anybody else. Hurt other people, but didn't kill anybody else. Hurt his two passengers. And now it's 40 years later. So do we overlook it and say, okay, he made a mistake. It was a one-time mistake. And it's time to retire his number, which a lot of us are pulling for. That's what we're shooting for, is to get Pele's number 31 retired. But then you look at, what would you do? How would you feel if somebody was drunk, hit a family member's car and killed them? Would you extend the same exact grace to that person that you are, in my case, and the case the rest of us, to Pele Lindbergh? And again, I don't know what the answer is to that. I have two children, 19 and 14, and if they were hurt or God forbid killed by a drunk driver, would I forgive? I can't tell you that. I don't think I could forgive. I mean, thinking about it at the moment, I don't think I could forgive that and hold love. But somebody else might say, yeah, I could forgive that because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be a forgiving person because everybody makes mistakes. It's tough. This is tough. And this, you might say, well, what does that have to do with it with a divided world? Well, that's another division. And what can people possibly um, look at and say, okay, that's not something I like, but it's something that is acceptable, or something that was a mistake. And 99 times out of 100, they would not have done that. In case of Pelly Lindbergh, 99 times out of 100, he would not have been drinking and driving. It just is the one time that he did it. That's the one time that, cost him everything. If somebody else does it and they get arrested 8, 9, 10 times and they've done it, that many times, and then somebody gets killed, to me, that's a different story. That's a little bit different. Neither one are good, but one is a little more tolerable than the other. If somebody has, um, and I don't want to use the word racist, but if somebody has idea, let's say I'm Italian. So let's say somebody says, well, you got to be careful marrying an Italian because they could be mob connected, especially ones that grew up in Philadelphia. And, you never know, right? I mean, that's a stereotype. And we all live with them, no matter what nationality you are, there's some sort of stereotype. Can you overlook that? Now I can. I remember I was at a lunch at one of the companies where I train, and it was a corporation. I mean, a large corporation. It was a pharmaceutical company. And one of the women at the table was talking about an Italian guy, and she was using derogatory language about this Italian guy and saying some things that honestly went right over my head. It didn't even dawn on me that it was offensive. I didn't think twice about it. And I remember her saying it, but it didn't bother me whatsoever. I had no problem with it at all. And later on that day, I was walking through the hallway and she happened to be walking by me and she said, I want to talk to you. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. And she pulled me aside and she said, I want to apologize to you. And I, for the life of me, could not figure out what she wanted to apologize for. I had no idea. Like, what's up? And she said, well, all those things I said about Italians, I know you're Italian. I'm so sorry that I did that. Now, look, could I have made a big deal about it and gone to HR and got her in trouble and possibly cost her job? Sure, I could have done that. Why? Why? What would be the point? She wasn't, she was, yeah, what she did was not right. What she did was wrong. But that was a time that I thought this is something that can be overlooked. This is something that I don't think it made her a bad person. I think she was just talking about one specific situation. Uh, So somebody else might have a lawsuit against her because she was a boss. She was high up in the company and try to get her fired. And to me, it wasn't worth it. Now if somebody does commits a crime, somebody's confesses to you that they have murdered someone, that's a different story. You can't overlook that. That's when you have to report them to the authorities. I give credit to people, and I know of a father who had to hand his son over after his son had murdered his girlfriend, and he loved his son, but he also knew that he had to do the right thing and turn his son in. Now, some parents might not. Some parents might hide their kid out and help them clean themselves up and cover their tracks. What would you do in that situation? I don't think any of us could tell until we would be in that situation, and no one wants to be in that situation. It's easy to say, this is what I would do, this is what I would do, this is what I would do, but you don't know until you're actually faced with that particular situation. So there is the one side of you that wants to be authentic and be exactly who you say you are. And then there's the other side of you that doesn't want to ruffle feathers and make people feel uncomfortable. And sometimes it's hard to know when to make that decision, to know when to say, all right, this is where I draw the line, or this is not enough to cause me to draw a line. I can live with what it is, and I could go and just ignore it. Hard to do today. And social media has made it harder. It certainly has. It's, again, much easier to get angry and type things than to actually look somebody in the eye and say them. And again, not for physical violence purposes. 'Cause a lot of people say, well, it's because you're afraid physically. No, that's not the reason. The reason is because you see that person, and when you look at their eyes, it's a lot different than when you are behind a keyboard and you're not really seeing them. It's easy to hate one person. It's harder to, I'm sorry, I said it backwards. It's easy to hate a group of people. It's much harder to hate one person. If you feel that you don't like a certain race or a certain religion or whatever it is, and I'll use, for me, Italian. If you don't want to associate with Italian people, and you don't want to, you say, they might be in the mob, and they do this, do that, they do this. You might feel that way generally, but what happens is, it's easy to do that when you just say a whole group of people. But if you walk up to somebody who is Italian and you talk to them and you look at their eyes and you have a conversation, and you find out that you have a lot more in common than you thought, that hate starts to melt away. Generalized hate, I think, is the problem. I think it's, we look at a whole group of people, whether it's people who are in MAGA, or whether people who are a certain color, or if they're of color, or if they're of a religion, and you say, well, I don't like them. I don't want to be bothered with them. But when you meet somebody of that religion, or who believes in that particular political cause, or is that ethnicity, it's harder to hate them one-on-one than it is to, that hate just melts away. It just goes away, or it should. If it doesn't, then there is something that is psychologically not right, because I think most people have that compassion, that they don't hate somebody. And I've seen that. And I think all of us have seen that in our lives, where people say, I don't like this group, but they meet somebody of that group, and all of a sudden they're friends. There was a show, I don't remember how long ago, but it was about a Ku Klux Klan member who's friends with an African American person. I just couldn't wrap my head around, how could you be friends with somebody who, on both sides, one, you hate the group of people that they are, but you're willing to be their friend. I couldn't understand that. And on the other side, you're a person who is hated, your group is hated, but you're willing to be friends with somebody that hates what you are, except for you. And I just couldn't understand how that works. I still don't. I scratch my head. I'm like, man, it's so incongruent. It just doesn't seem to jive. It doesn't seem to work. But that's because it's easy to hate a group, not as easy to hate an individual. It's harder. So sometimes there has to be a decision made, where, are you going to dig in your heels and say, this is what I believe, and no matter what, I'm sticking to it. And if people walk away from me, or if I have to walk away from them, then so be it. Or are there times where you're going to say, you know what, this isn't the most important issue in the world. This person has done a lot for me and has been close to me, and I would choose friendship over losing them in my life. In my case, I really struggle with that. I still struggle with that, and I don't think I ever won't struggle with that. I see hypocrisy, and I, Dr. Jacqueline has just written a great book about being non-judgmental, and that's not easy. I mean, it's not. It's very difficult not to judge when you see something that either is something you really believe in, and you think, "Wow, that person's really, really great," or something where you look at somebody and say, "Boy, that's so repugnant," and you want to say, I'm just so sickened by that person, and we judge. I mean, it's not easy, and that's why she wrote the book, because what Dr. Jacqueline's trying to get across is that judgment is something that we want to steer clear of as much as we can. And I don't know that we do that very well anymore. I think we are judgmental. My stint in the hospital, I was judgmental about drug addicts. You know, uh, I would see a drug addict and think, what a dope, what an idiot. Why would they choose to do that to themselves? All they have to do is just stop. Why do they do that? In this, they want to be that way. And then I wound up meeting a lot of people who were in that position in the psych ward at Bryn Mawr Hospital. And I found out I was wrong. It wasn't a choice. These people didn't choose to be drug addicts. They became drug addicts, and then they were addicts. And once they're addicts, they can't be without it. In fact, a lot of people may not realize this. Maybe you do. I don't know. But a lot of times, if you come off certain drugs cold turkey, you could actually die. So you actually need to wean yourself off. You can't just stop. And I'm not a drug expert. I don't know what drugs that is, but I know pharmaceutical drugs that I've taken. I've taken benzos before. I still do, but I've lowered them down. I couldn't just stop them when they were really high for sleep and for anxiety. It was okay to be on them, but they're not great for long-term health. So I cut it down. Now, did I just pull them out and stop? No, I didn't do that, because that would be dangerous. I could potentially die from that. But I've lowered them slowly, and hopefully we'll be off them soon. That's the same thing with people who are drug addicts, and I'm blaming myself for being judgmental. I'm as at fault as anybody else. I would look at people and think, the same thing that a lot of people think. Just get a job. Why do you have to be shoot heroin? Why do you have to do this or do that? Why can't you just be quote normal? And you know what? They can't. That's just it. I was judging them based on ignorance of what it was. So instead of judging now, I look at people and I think, all right, they've been through something. Something has gotten them to this position. What is it? And is there anything that I can do to help them not be in that position? I did intensive therapy with a guy a little older than me. I'm 50. He was about 52 or 53, and he, has been on drugs and alcohol for a long time. And all the things that I thought I was so ashamed of when I met him, because he was such a good person. And even though he had all those problems, I thought, man, how many people did I judge that were just like this guy, who, for many, many, many reasons, went into that hole and couldn't get out and was stuck in it. And, he was talking about not being able to buy a piece of pizza for dinner. And he was thrilled that he got a $1 raise from his job. And I thought, my God, this is somebody who I would have looked at and judged and said, what a terrible person. He's on drugs, and he's a horrible guy, or not even a horrible guy, but just somebody that I wouldn't ever want to associate with. And I found myself thinking, I don't want to lose touch with him. I gave him my phone number, and we stay in contact. So, um, that's the line that you have to draw. You know, uh, you can't do that all the time. If there are people who don't want to help themselves, I've had people I've offered help to say, I'm not interested. I just don't feel that I have a need for that. You can't fix me. So I back off. There's no reason to try to push. So as we end tonight, I know we're about a minute in. Just think about what is it that you can live with? What is it that you can't live with? And how can you be as um, compassionate as possible without sacrificing your own morality? How do you do that? And again, I don't have the answer. It's not an easy answer, but everybody has to make that decision for themselves. So, Dr. Jacqueline, if you could put it in the quote, I forgot about the time. I know to mention the time change, but I forgot what the times are. So I'm going to wait. Next week, the show is going to be, there's a time change in the UK. So it's going to still be 8 o'clock Eastern time in the United States, New York time. But in the UK, it's going to be at, Dr. Jacqueline on there it is. She's got it. So 8 p.m. New York and 4 hour difference in the UK. Okay. So it'll be UK 4 hours ahead. All right. So we got that. So I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank you for Claire and Rachel and Antoinette for commenting tonight. And next week, I'm hopefully going to have a guest about that Pele Lindbergh movie, and really just an amazing guy, Charlie Min, and can't wait to introduce him to all of you. So thank you very much, and until next week, have a great week. I'll see you next Monday.
Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? In a world quick to judge, one book dares to reveal the hidden cost of silence. Discover Holy but Harmful, The Silent Sin of Judgment, How Hidden Judgments Destroy Relationships and Damage Lives by Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. The Amazon #1 bestseller that's transforming the way we understand ourselves and the way we see others. Pick up the companion workbook to uncover your own hidden judgments and learn how to break free from them. Available now on Amazon and at fine bookstores worldwide.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Tracy Cram Perkins, a dementia caregiving survivor teaching how to balance care with peace of mind. #1 resource for dementia caregivers. It's the book Dementia Home Care: How to Prepare Before, During, and After. Over 17,000 copies sold of this must-have guide. And now a testimonial from Tracy Smith.
If I was to describe this book to someone who is going through a similar situation, I would underscore how important it is to have some sort of a tool or a guidebook to help you through certain stages. And there's so many, it's such an unknown topic to the average person. And to have this as a reference is essential. It's going to help you get through it personally, as well as help your loved one manage.
To learn more, go to TracyCramPerkins.com. Tracy Cram Perkins is an award-winning author. She's also the host of Dementia Home Care television show. Watch it here on USA Global TV and Radio.
What if one simple skill could change the way you connect with the world? What if listening could open doors to deeper relationships, stronger businesses, and a better you? Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the Listening Mentor, brings you USA Global TV and Radio, a space where voices are heard, ideas are shared, and global communities thrive. Through the elevated listeners' courses and books, you'll master the power of listening, set boundaries with confidence, and transform conversations into opportunities. Join us. Listen, learn, elevate. Whether you're a leader, a coach, a business owner, or someone seeking stronger connections, your journey starts today. Subscribe, learn, and transform today.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USAGlobalTV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dyes. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.